I remember applying for, but never getting the chance to play Icon's Combat Arena back in the day, due to being located in the Southeast Asia region where it was never officially released. I did follow the developments along from an observer's perspective, so I never had first-hand experience with the game. I got the general gist of the issues it had that led to it eventually shuttering its doors. Much like Street Fighter II being the original game whose mechanics were derived into the fighting game genre, Smash Bros. Is synonymous with the gameplay of what we would now call the platform fighter genre. It's still early in the years for this type of game. Many platform fighters are still referred to as Smash clones. I consider myself somewhat of a fan of the genre. In addition to Smash, I've also put a decent amount of time into some of the more prominent platform fighters, as well as some of the more obscure, all across the quality spectrum. And I think the major takeaway is that, like what we've seen historically with traditional fighting games, for new entries in the genre, there has to be a unique selling point, or USP, in order to survive. It's important to talk about icons because, inevitably, Rush Rev will be compared to it. It is built upon its resources after all. Icons didn't make much impact because its USPs were outside of the realm of gameplay, online features, and being on a more accessible platform than a GameCube. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to get people to play the game, since they didn't find it fun or interesting. And while it was a competently put together platform fighter, it didn't offer much beyond the basic gameplay of, well, melee. The cast being mostly simple characters with the gameplay functions of much beloved Nintendo characters, but none of the familiarity also meant there wasn't much character-specific gameplay experiences to be had either, Afigalu and the unreleased Ezi being the exception. So, is Rushdown Revolt any different, and does it have any USPs? I'm glad to report that, yes, it's doing some very unique things that no other platform fighter is doing, and that in itself is a compelling reason to keep an eye on this game. I'm treating the alpha as a prototype rather than a proper demo, and as such, I'm not going to be focusing on things like graphics or sound too much. The team has a roadmap to improving those things as time goes on, so we'll be talking mostly game view. Starting off, movement feels pretty good, about the same as Icon's Legacy, which is quite a high standard that a lot of platform fighters run into issues with right out the gate. There is a bit of rough animation reading poorly, but it's a minor issue that I only really noticed on a few moves. For example, this side B move. The traditional Smash air dodge has been changed up into an air dash called Rush that reminds me of 8-way air dashes, except with free movement at any angle, and notably doesn't put you into the helpless state. Characters have also received overhauls, differentiating them further from the original Icons version, and thus further into their own unique feel rather than imitating existing Smash characters. The crown jewel of the game's mechanics, however, is the Spark system. It's a binary resource where you either have it or you don't have it, and to get it, all you need to do is land a hit. Having Spark allows you to cancel the end lag of any move, leading to some really crazy combo potential as you chain multiple Spark cancels together. It's essentially a Guilty Gear Roman cancel, but with even less limitations. You can also spend it on a super jump, and you can do tilt into special cancels with it. The Spark system is what really makes this alpha shine, as it's one of those all-important mechanics where just exercising your ability is fun and training. This also means that the pace of gameplay is fast. Very, very fast. As the game simplified scaling knockback with damage into 3 distinct knockback bands, this makes it such that you can lab out and apply reliable combos within these bands. Essentially, you have green, yellow, and red health, each which has a fixed knockback multiplier. When you run out of life, you get 3 more last chance hits before anything will guarantee a KO. This might be a loss in terms of freedom of combos that some players of platform fighters might love, but personally I feel the Spark system makes up for it in terms of player expression. Essentially, instead of being something simpler, it's something different, which is a valuable thing in this era of platform fighter growth. Defensively, it's quite interesting too. Shield is now directional, which means cross-ups are now possible, but you're also given a push block, which can reflect projectiles. If you have Spark, you can also do a Guilty Gear-esque burst once per stock, which cancels all momentum and gets the opponent off you, but it can also be punished if baited. A lot of this stuff is obviously inspired by traditional fighters, but the defense game is kept interesting and dynamic. and uniquely platform fighter-esque, as you can easily turn your shield around and reposition yourself by using rush out or shield. All in all, it's a really unique entry into the genre, and I think it's worth checking out just for its gameplay mechanics, which in my few hours with it were very fun to mess around with. There are a couple of things I would bring up. The current in-game tutorial does a good job going over the game mechanics, but there are apparently character-specific mechanics that I never learned about, and that confused me a little. They're apparently on these little info cards on the Kickstarter page, and I think it would have been good to have those in-game somewhere. Perhaps on the pause screen, like traditional fighting game moveset information. The life bar is a little hard to read as well, being perhaps a little too over-designed. It's hard to pick out the important information in the heat of the moment, and with the amount of colors, it's hard to pick out against the stage and the characters. I would suggest the important information, namely the current knockback ban and the actual health value being prioritized. That's really about the extent of things I can think of though. On a side note, I only managed to try out 1v1s. I'm aware there's some interesting team modes with assists, which also looks like a super interesting game mode that's unique to this game, so there might be even more to explore. If you want to try it out for yourself and can get people together, I'm also happy to report that the game runs on pretty solid rollback netcode, and has a good functional lobby system. You might run into a couple connection bugs here and there, but it's an alpha, I cut it some slack. As mentioned, I'm treating this alpha as a gameplay and netcode test, rather than a full demo that's representative of a final product. Of course, the game could stand to continue receiving improvements visually and in its UI UX, and maybe the VFX and SFX could do with a little more oomph, so on and so forth. But this stuff falls under polish, and I'm fairly certain the team is already aware of the work that needs to be done in those areas. Rush Rev is bringing new game mechanic ideas to the platform fighter table, and looks to be executing them well. And I'm down to keep an eye out and see how the final product eventually turns out.